A very good morning, countrymen and women, and welcome to this national address. I thank you for joining me. Before we proceed, I would like to request all of you to observe a moment of silence for our dearly departed Republican President, the 60th Republican President, His Excellency Dr. Edgar Chagwa, who is still lying in state in South Africa at this very moment. Allow me to proceed with the moment of silence. Thank you. You forgive my voice, I'm just recovering from a flu. There has been a flu which has been going around, and I was one of its victims. So you forgive my voice as we proceed with this national address. Ladies and gentlemen, fellow countrymen and women, again, I thank you for joining me in this national address. In terms of the structure of this national address, the plan is to have this national address for 30 minutes. And after that, we are going to take some questions regarding the issues that we would have discussed. And then we are going to attend to those questions for a period of 15 minutes. And the intention is to conclude this national address by 10:45 hours. In terms of the key topics that we are going to discuss during this national address, we basically have two key topics. The first topic, to replace him and his government on the 13th of August 2026, which is next year. That is the key item number one. The second key item that we are going to discuss this morning is the TONSE Alliance as a vehicle for effecting the necessary regime change next year. And then after that, we are going to proceed to questions and answers. So I wish to beseech you all to post your questions and let your questions be sober so that they can be responded to in a sober manner too. Fellow countrymen and women, allow me now to proceed to the first agenda item of this national address, which is the total failure by President Hakainde Hichilema and his government to properly run the affairs of this nation, and the need to replace him to government. And I'll itemize some of those basic expectations which the citizens of this republic have with regard to any person who is entrusted with running the affairs of this nation. It doesn't matter whether that person or group of persons is the UNIP government or the MMD government or the PeP government or the UPND government. As citizens of this republic, we do have, and we have always held, certain basic expectations of how the performance should be with regard to those whom we have entrusted to run the affairs of this government, of this republic. The first basic expectation by the citizens is that national resources and opportunities will be shared equally among all citizens. I'll repeat that. The first basic expectation of the citizens of this republic is that national resources and opportunities will be shared equally among all the citizens of the republic. That is number one. Number two, the citizens of this republic expect that the law will apply fairly among all citizens, regardless of political affiliation. So that is the second basic expectation. Number three, the citizens of this republic expect from those who lead them that corruption will be earnestly fought in a transparent manner across the board. That corruption will be fought in a transparent manner across the board. That is expectation number 3. Number 4, the citizens of this republic expect that the leaders who are in office, whom they elect into office using the ballot, will not abuse their positions. The 5th expectation by the citizens is that the rule of law will be respected by everybody and anyone, regardless of their positions in government. And the 6th expectation is that the government will not be harsh on its citizens. So those are some of the basic expectations that any citizen of this republic has regarding the people that they elect into office, regarding the people that are presiding over the affairs of this republic, which currently happen to be the UPND government headed by President Hakainde Hichilema. Now, let us look at the performance of President Hakainde Hichilema and his UPND government regarding these basic expectations that I've just illustrated above. On the first item, the expectation of the people, like I outlined, is that national resources and opportunities shall be shared equally among all citizens. And when you look at what is occurring on the ground, you realize that the majority, when I say majority, in my estimate, more than 80% of all government positions in parastatals as well as central government are occupied by UPND supporters. So when you look at a nation like Zambia, we are a multi-party democracy. What that means is that different people will support different political parties. There are people who support UPND, there are people who support the Patriotic Front, there are people who support the Patriots for Economic Progress, PeP, there are people who support Socialist Party, people who support Citizens First, and so on and so forth. That is how things function in a democracy. But when it comes to job opportunities, you as a government cannot give all job opportunities to a small grouping of people who support your party, to a small grouping of people who come from your party strongholds. That is abuse of authority of office. So regarding this first expectation by the citizens, that national resources and opportunities will be shared equally among all citizens in a fair and transparent manner. It is clear that the UPND government and President Hakainde Hichilema has failed on this basic expectation of the people. Let's go to the second basic expectation, that the law will apply fairly among all citizens regardless of political affiliation. That if I do wrong, expectation of the people. It is not an expectation. Let us look at the issue of hate speech. The question which you, the citizens of this republic, should be asking is why Honorable Chishimba Kambwili is in prison today and why the UPND Secretary General, Batuke Imenda, is not in prison for calling the Archbishop of Lusaka as Lucifer. Because if what Honorable Chishimba Kambwili said was hate speech, then it should follow that what Honorable Batuke Imenda also said was hate speech. And if you are going to send Honorable Chishimba Kambwili to prison for hate speech, you must also follow and send Honorable Batuke Imenda to prison for hate speech. So we can clearly see that there is selective application of the law there. Additionally, you, the citizens out there, should ask yourselves to say, why is Mr. David Kazadi in police cells today, and why is Ms. Harwindi not in police cells? Because if we are honest with one another, if the law was applied equally, then the people who feature in a video which is corrupting morals in a pornographic video should be treated fairly before the law. If they are going to be arrested, then they need to be arrested together. If we as citizens say, no, it's okay, we'll forget about them, we'll not arrest them, then they should both be outside. But you cannot pick one and leave the other one outside. You cannot put in prison Honorable Chimbagambwiri and leave outside prison Honorable Batuka Imenda. You cannot do that. Then it's not a fair society. You cannot put in police cells Mr. David Kazadi and not put in the same police cells Ms. Harwindi. Then you are not being a fair society. So that is basic expectation number 2, that the law will apply fairly among all citizens, which President Hakainde Hichilema and his UPND government have completely failed. Let us move on to basic expectation number 3, and that is that corruption is going to be earnestly and honestly fought by the leaders that are put in office. The questions which you, the citizens, should be asking your government is, why is the ZAMSA Director General's case, which was taken to court, in inverted commas, a number of months ago, not making progress? Because we know that when everybody else is taken to court, they are quickly convicted and sent to prison. The judgment comes very quickly. That is why you have Honorable Ronald Chitotera in prison right now. You have Honorable Nixon Chirangwa in prison right now. You have Honorable Bowman Nusambo in prison right now. You have Honorable Chimbagambwiri in prison right now, and so many other people. Now, we have this Director General of ZAMSA, who once stood on the UPND ticket as mayor of Lusaka sometime in 2018. We heard in the press that he was arrested, but his matter is not making progress at court. The question is why? Why are others prosecuted quickly? Why is Munia Zuru prosecuted quickly and sent to prison? Why is Honorable Mabonga prosecuted quickly and sent to prison, while certain people who are affiliated to the ruling party, they are just arrested just to tick the box, and their matter never go anywhere? Why should it be like that? Equally, why has there been no arrest in the ambulance scandal? Because the government of Zambia, using taxpayers' money, paid for 156 ambulances, of which very few, the last time I checked, I think it was just 11 which were delivered. And certain people committed themselves to resign if ambulances are not delivered by end of May. May came and passed, June came and passed, we are now in July. These people have not resigned, and the law has not visited these people. Why should it be like that? If it was corruption or alleged corruption related to the previous PF regime, by now all those people would have been in prison. Why should there be selective application of the rule of law? Is that the Zambia that we want to live in? Is that the Zambia that we want to raise our children? My answer to that question is a definite no. We want a fair and equitable Zambia, whereby the way you treat Sean Tembo is the way you treat Cornelius Mwita. Zambia will abuse their positions. That is a basic expectation of the people, the citizens who elect leaders. It is a basic expectation that those who are elected into office will not abuse their positions once they get there. With regard to this expectation, let us look at a very, well-discussed issue. The issue of the billions of kwacha which government spends in taxpayers' money to transport President Hakainde Hichilema from Community House, where he sleeps, to State House, where he works from, and back. I personally took a matter to court, to the constitutional defense of the president. I made a very clear tabulation. The cost of police officers who do route lining, the cost of fuel, on the estimated number of vehicles, and the total cost, countrymen and women, was coming to 1.4 billion kwacha per annum, per year. So for the 5 years that President Hakainde Hichilema will be in office, you are talking about 1.4 billion kwacha times 5. That is 7 billion kwacha. And I can assure you that when we took that petition to court, the government, through the Attorney General, did not dispute the figures that we tabulated before court. They did not. In other words, they agreed with those figures. And that case is there. It's there at the Constitutional Court. Unfortunately, the court ruled that there is no law which compels a president to live in State House as opposed to living in his personal house. But countrymen and women, it's just a matter of priority and also a matter of morality. Because when you go to our hospitals right now, you'll find that the majority of them don't have medicines. So why should one individual spend 7 billion kwacha over the period they're in office at an average of 1.4 billion kwacha per annum, moving from one residence to the other? They go to have lunch at home and come back to State House. They go in the morning, come back at lunch, go back to State House, come back in the evening, at huge expense to the taxpayers. So clearly, countrymen and women, with regards to the expectation of the citizens that leaders in office will not abuse their positions, we can see clearly that Mr. Hakainde Hichilema, the president of the Republic of Zambia, is abusing his position as Republican president to waste taxpayers' money, to waste money which can be used to buy medicines for the people and to empower the youth. If you got that 1.4 billion per annum, which is 7 billion over 5 years, and created a rotating fund or a revolving fund and allowed the youth to actually borrow. You know, most of these youths to start a business, they are not asking for too much money. If you lend them a maximum of 50,000 kwacha, any amount between 5,000 and 50,000 kwacha, most of these youths who spend their time loafing at home will find something to do. They'll go and open barbershops, they'll go and do this, they'll go and do that. But that money is being wasted on one person, simply because of the position that that one person occupies, being that of Republican president. It should not be like that, countrymen and women. That should not be the Zambia that we should aspire to live in. That should not be the type of Zambia that we should be aspiring to let our children live in. Let us move on to the fifth basic expectation of the people, the basic expectation of the citizens. If you as a citizen, what is outlined here is not one of your expectations, then you can raise your hand to say, me, I don't have such an expectation. You are at liberty to do that. So moving to the fifth expectation, basic expectation of the people, that the rule of law will be respected. We have seen, countrymen and women, a situation whereby the Speaker of the National Assembly, Madam Neri Muti, issues a ruling where she interprets the Constitution and says that no, in terms of the separation of powers in the Constitution, the Concord cannot issue an order to stop a process which is already ongoing in the National Assembly. Those provisions of separation of powers are contained in the Constitution. And when you go to the Constitution, specifically you go to Article 128 of the Constitution, it is very clear. It spells out to you that the only institution that can interpret the Constitution is the Constitutional Court. And there's no exception there. There's nowhere where it says the Speaker of the National Assembly can also interpret the Constitution. There is nowhere. Article 128 of the Republican Constitution, as amended, is very explicit that there is only one body that can interpret the Constitution, and that is the Constitutional Court. It has full and final jurisdiction in terms of interpretation of the Constitution. So the question that we need to ask Madam Neri Muti is, where does she get the power? Where does she get the jurisdiction to interpret the Constitution? Clearly, countrymen and women, this is a clear case of lack of respect for the rule of law. Not by people occupying lower levels of government, but by Madam Neri Muti misdirected herself by attempting to interpret the Constitution, we should have seen the president. I personally have taken a lot of matters to the Constitutional Court. I've won some of the cases, I've lost some of the cases, but in every case, I've always respected the Constitutional Court because it is our creation as citizens of this republic. So whether they issue a judgment that you agree with or they issue a judgment that you disagree with, you need to respect the Constitutional Court. The Speaker of the National Assembly does not respect the Constitutional Court. And in a normal democracy, of which ours is not one of them, the Speaker of the National Assembly should have been cited for contempt of court. But that has not happened. And the question is, why? Why hasn't the Speaker of the National Assembly been cited for contempt for disrespecting the Constitutional Court? Countrymen and women, when you talk about the rule of law and the performance of the UPND government in that regard, there are plenty of other examples. We have another case whereby the High Court made a ruling on the issue of the presidency of the Patriotic Front. And there is a very clear order directing that Honorable Mao Sampa is the president of the Patriotic Front. That order was taken to the Registrar of Societies, and up to now, the Registrar of Societies has refused to effect the necessary changes on the register of the members of the Patriotic Front. The question is, why is there blatant disrespect for the rule of law? Why isn't the Registrar of Societies cited for contempt of court and arrested and locked up so that people can have respect for the rule of law? Similarly, we have a situation where the Speaker of the National Assembly again was given the court order, clearly outlining that Honorable Mao Sampa is the leader of the Patriotic Front, and again that he is the leader of the opposition in Parliament. And again, the Speaker has refused to comply with that court order, and there are no contempt proceedings. She's free to disrespect court orders. The question is why? Is that the kind of Zambia that we're going to live in, whereby the only place where we seek solace, which is the judiciary, even in the rare cases that we win a matter, that court order is not respected, and there are no repercussions for disrespecting a court order? Is that the Zambia we are going to live in, where there is a total breakdown in the rule of law? The question is, if that level of anarchy is allowed to continue, where is it going to lead this country? Where there is no respect for the rule of law? Where will that level of anarchy lead this country? Is that the direction we want to take our country? My answer to that question, countrymen and women, is a definite no. And the only solution is to ensure that we change government come next year. We are a democracy. We have an opportunity on the 13th of November 2026 to change government and put a government whereby these basic expectations of the people are going to be respected by the people who are in leadership. That is the kind of Zambia that we need. Number 6, and the last basic expectation of the people, is that the government will not be harsh on its citizens. Because in terms of our governance system, countrymen and women, where the government is the one which is entrusted with controlling issues of defense, they are the ones who are entrusted with controlling issues of internal security. They are the ones who control the military. They are the ones who control the police and all other law enforcement agencies. So what that means is that the government of the day that you elect into office, they have control on the armory of the nation, on all the firearms of the nation. They have that power. So the expectation of the citizens is that when this government is given all that power, they are given all that control on the military, given all that control on the police and various other law enforcement agencies, they are not going to use that power to be harsh on the citizens of the nation. Because remember, The common citizen is not armed. He cannot fight the government because the government have got all the power and all the weapons. So the expectation of us, the citizens, is that after giving the government of the day that power, they should not be harsh on the citizens. Okay, they should treat citizens in a fair and equitable manner. Even if, in terms of the balance of power, the government has far more power than a common citizen. The government should not abuse its power towards this common citizen. That is the expectation of the people. So let us look at how the government have fared with regard to that basic expectation of the citizens. We have this issue that recently happened in Mufumbwe, where a contingent of police officers was sent there, and the youths who we are told were doing illegal mining were brutalized. We saw in videos things burning, people injured, people killed. Countrymen and women, the question is that a fair treatment of the citizens by their government, a government which they elected into office? Is that a fair treatment, or a better way could have been adopted to resolve the issue which was there? Countrymen and women, the issue of squatters in our country is not an issue that started happening under the UPND. No, it is a long-standing issue. It is an issue that has faced several other governments before that. So the question is, where was the wisdom in sending a contingent of police officers? You give them live ammunition to go and crash with these people who are not stealing from anybody. They are merely trying to make a living. The question is, would there have been a better way in which President Hakainde Hichilema and his UPND government would have approached the issue of Mufumbwe in order to ensure that, number one, loss of property and loss of lives is prevented, and number two, in order to ensure that the people who have shown commitment to participate in the mining of minerals of our country, even at the smallest scale, are not brutalized but empowered. Countrymen and women, some of us have had the opportunity and the privilege to live in several other countries, and we've seen how these other countries deal with certain issues. For instance, in Zimbabwe, Zimbabwe is one of the largest miners of diamonds, although it is not very well documented as such. But in terms of small-scale diamond mining, Zimbabwe is one of what I see as a perfect example of how artisanal miners, who are small-scale miners who are using pick and shovel, can be empowered. In Zimbabwe, it is very easy to apply and to get an artisanal mining license. All you need to show is your identity, that you are a Zimbabwean. You make an application in the morning, in the afternoon, your license is ready. You have your pick and your shovel, and you go in an area, they sit you down, they teach you basic safety requirements, and you have inspectors at a particular site to make sure that even as you are doing your mining at a smallest scale, you don't create a safety hazard for yourself. You don't dig in such a way that the earth can collapse and bury you and kill you. So they teach them on basic safety, but they don't end there. They don't end at training these artisanal small-scale miners, at training them. They enforce the training with the presence of inspectors. Inspectors who don't carry guns to brutalize their citizens, no. Inspectors who carry a notepad and advise the citizens, say, no, you people who are digging there, the way you are digging there now, that thing can collapse. So stop digging there, come outside and start digging from this angle. That is how you empower your citizens. And when you go to Zimbabwe, you know, for us here in Zambia, there is a misconception that Zambia is well to do compared to Zimbabwe because of the sanctions which were in Zimbabwe, and them coming to Zambia at some point in 2008 to come and buy groceries and so on and so forth. But the Zimbabwean economy is twice as big as Zambia's economy. Our GDP is just about $30 billion. Zimbabwe's GDP is about $72 billion. So we are twice, they are twice, their economy is twice as big as ours. And in terms of the size, Zimbabwe is just the size of maybe Western Province combined with the Northwestern and Northern. That is the size of Zimbabwe. So in terms of geographical size, Zimbabwe is far smaller, but their GDP is more than twice ours because of the progressive economic policies that they implement. And when you go to Zimbabwe, most of the people well-to-do, when I say well-to-do, I don't mean just being able to drive a double cab and live in a 4-bedroom house in Minwood and be able to bury your relative at Memorial Park. No, I'm talking about people who have resources, who have money, who have private jets. You know, you go to Zimbabwe, it's got the largest number. Most of the people who own businesses there are Zimbabweans. That's why they even have a dollar billionaire, Strive Musiwa, who owns Econet. So they empower their people. You can only develop a nation by empowering your people, not by brutalizing them the way President Hakainde Hichilema and his government decided to go and brutalize the youth who were in Mufungwe a few weeks ago. That is not the way to go. So clearly, on the issue and basic expectation of the people, to expect their government not to brutalize them and not to be harsh to them, we have seen clearly that President Hakainde Hichilema and his government have failed. The question, you have seen a number of supporters of the ruling party, which is good. It's good to be a supporter of the ruling party, but number one, you are a citizen of this country. And since you are a supporter of the ruling party, you should ask your government and your president what is so difficult with issuing licenses to the people who want to do small-scale mining. If a person wants to buy a shovel and a pick, and they want to start digging somewhere, hoping that there is gold there, or there is copper, or there is any other mineral, why not empower them? And these people, they do apply. They apply at the Department of Mines, and they are not responded to. There are applications which have been pending there for years, even before the UPND government came into office. You know, so the question is, what is so difficult with allowing people to pursue these mining ventures at a small scale? If someone does not find any gold, which means they wasted money which they bought the shovel and the pig and the food they ate there, that is their loss. That is not the loss of the government. On the other hand, if a small-scale miner who is empowered with a license goes and digs and they find gold, they sell that gold, they will empower themselves and empower their relatives, so we will begin to have local rich people. You know, local rich people, which we currently don't have. The people who are doing very well currently in Zambia are not entrepreneurs, because entrepreneurs are suffering. It is people who work for multinational corporations. Those are the rich people who we have. So we have our economy upside down. Because ideally, in any economy, the people that should be rich are people who are entrepreneurs and not people who are employees of multinational corporations. It shouldn't be like that. Then just know that our economic policies are upside down. Countrymen and women, we have looked at those 6 basic expectations which the people have from their government, and we have seen that the current government has failed regarding all those basic expectations. So, in terms of the verdict for the government, there is no question that if you mean well for this country, and that if you mean well for yourself, we need to be able to change government next year. There's no question about it. We need to be able to change government next year. So the question then is, how best can we do that? And how do we ensure that the government that we elect next year and the president that we elect next year is going to perform better than the people who are there at the moment? Because from my standpoint, countrymen and women, I don't know whether it is just me or this is an observation that is noted by every other citizen. We seem to be making more and more worse decisions as a country when it comes to electing our leaders and electing a government. In my considered view, we had the KK government, which was the first government in this country. And in my considered view, they were the most visionary government that ever existed. They understood the economy, they understood diversification, they knew that we don't want people to be coming from all the corners of Zambia, all of them coming to Lusaka to come and look for employment. Let us create employment in these far-flung areas. They created industries such as Livingston Motor Assembly, where we were assembling motor vehicles, Land Rovers and Fiats. For those of you who are very young to know that, we once used to manufacture brand new vehicles here in Zambia under the KK government. We used to do that. We had Mansa batteries in Mansa, we had Kawambwa Tea, we had a bicycle assembly plant in Chipata, we had Mwinirunga Pineapple Factory in Mwinirunga of Northwestern. So you can see that that is a government and a president who were visionary, who wanted to empower Zambians by making sure that we are self-sufficient, by ensuring that we have local industries and we're able to export. So in my view, the KK government was the most visionary that we ever had. And then we started dropping. We came to the MMD, well and good, they liberalized the economy, and so on and so forth. But we made too many mistakes. We sold companies which were profitable in addition to selling companies that were not profitable. Those were fundamental mistakes. We took backwards our manufacturing base by more than 50 years, in my view. And it is only now with the coming of some Chinese that we're able to make basic things like toothpicks, sealing boards and so on and so forth. But our manufacturing base was taken back more than 50 years backwards. And then we moved on. We had the Patriotic Front. They did what they could, invested in infrastructure, which was good, but the overall management of the economy was poor. It was poor. And then we moved on to the current administration, the UPND government. These ones, it's even difficult to point at one thing which they've done well. When you ask them themselves to say, what have you done well? They are going to Kwenyura on completing an IMF program and being able to get an IMF bailout package. But when you look at previous governments, their input to the nation is something we could point at. How are we going to point at the ability of the UPND government to obtain an IMF bailout? Is the Minister of Finance going to make photocopies of that IMF agreement and circulate it to hungry Zambians and tell them, oh, we were able to achieve this? Of course, that will not make any sense. So there's that risk, there's that fear, countrymen and women, that even as we aspire to change government, we seem to be digressing. We seem to be moving from bad to worse. Every time we change government, we seem to be moving from bad to worse. So right now, the verdict is very clear. We need to change government. The UPND must go. President Hakainde Hichilema must pack his bags after August of next year, and he must go. But the question is, who should we put there? Who can turn around the fortunes of our country and ensure that we go on a path of development and progress, and not put in a government which would be worse than the UPND government? How do we achieve that? That's a question which you and I, as citizens who love this country, must attend to and must answer honestly, without putting on our political lenses, without identifying ourselves with our political affiliations, to say, no, me, I'm UPND, or me, I'm PeP, or me, I'm PF, just objectively. Because when you talk about Zambia turning around its economic fortunes, everyone is going to benefit. It doesn't matter your political affiliation. You might be a UPND cadre, you might be a PF cadre, a PeP member. You will benefit because the economy is doing well. So what we need is someone who can go into State House and turn around the fortunes of this country so that we can begin to make progress. Because previously, Zambia used to be a beacon of economic prosperity in the region. When I say region, I mean the sub-Saharan region. Our economy was bigger and better than Kenya. Our economy was bigger and better than Tanzania. Our economy was bigger and better than Angola. Our economy was bigger and better than Zimbabwe. The only country in sub-Saharan Africa which we used to compete with was South Africa. That's the only country we used to compete with. But now, even Malawi is their GDP, despite their small size of the economy, their GDP is comparable to that of Zambia. Okay? And other countries which were far poorer than us, like Mozambique, like Angola, their GDP is far bigger than ours now. Countries like Tanzania, you can't even compare. Our GDP is around $30 billion. Tanzania's GDP is about close to $300 billion. That's a lot of GDP. So we are going downwards, while the people who used to look up to us are all doing better than us. It's like, you live in a compound, and when you all started in the compound, you were all living in one-roomed houses. Not one bedroom, but one-roomed houses. And then your neighbor this side, they extend their house, they make it a 3-room. Your neighbor this side, they extend 3-room. You are still in a 1-room. Then before long, your neighbor does a wall fence. Your neighbor is developing. All your neighbors are developing. 20 years along the line, you are still in a 1-room. Because your father is not a responsible father. And even after that father, when you have a stepfather, is also not a responsible stepfather. So all the fathers you are having in that household are not responsible. They can't take you anywhere. So the question is, can we try and get a responsible stepfather for Zambia who will be able to build, because the land is there, who will be able to build this 1-room into a mansion so that we can compare with the other people in the neighborhood? That's a question which we need to objectively answer, without any jokes, but with the seriousness that it deserves. There is a certain part, the second part of this address, regarding the TONSE Alliance. Due to a limitation of time, it has been decided that the component to do with the TONSE Alliance, which is essentially the issue of the history, will be handled at a later time. It will be handled at a later time so that it can be given the attention that it deserves. But it is my submission, countrymen,